on? It is Ash here coming at you today in Clash Royale, and I am joined by returning guest, one of my favorite guests of all time. He is a really skilled game theorist, I'd almost say, and he's a very excellent streamer as well. It's none other than EsoPa. EsoPa, welcome back to the channel, man.
Yeah, it feels good to be back on the channel. Definitely flattered me with that, man. But
No,
thank you.
dude, it's true. It's true. I'm sure that anybody out there who's watched you would agree. But with the flattery out of the way, let's catch up, man. We're going to talk a little bit about 2v2 mode, a little bit about esports and the future of esports in Clash Royale. We're also going to talk about balance changes and how luck cards such as like Graveyard affects or does it have a place in a competitive esports environment. Is it okay to have all the cards be skill based or some luck based? Anyway, there's a lot of different directions that this conversation could go.
Yep.
I know you're a very passionate guy, just like I am. So I'm excited to see where this chat takes us. I hope you guys all enjoy listening as well. But before we get to all that, what are you playing lately, man? Where you at in game? You know, what's your cups doing, and where's your mind at? What's your goals?
So lately in Grand Challenge, like I'm a really big Grand Challenge player. Well, it's the only thing I usually play, but in that mode I'm playing either Minor Poison or I'm playing Hog Logbait, which is gaining in popularity right now.
Yeah, that deck's everywhere, man.
Yeah, it's really everywhere. Just how strong Goblin Barrel is.
Yeah, I'll flash it up on the screen in case you guys haven't seen it. But like literally, I think like a week ago, if you were look at the leaderboard, I think like 7 out of the top 10 people had this as their most recent deck, and I was like, oh my god, it's taken the world by storm. So you enjoy that deck?
Yeah, it's like I'm not sure, but I'm getting kind of known for bait, and it's good. I love the playstyle bait. Bait, relies on abusing opponents' mistakes, and it's a fun way to play.
Yeah, bait gets a lot of hate too. Bait hate. And and so does like Lava Loon and stuff like that. I'm just curious, while I have you on, I might as well ask, how do you feel about certain archetypes or certain decks getting like a lot of hate? Do you kind of subscribe to that, like Lava Loon or something like that, or Royal Giant, or are you kind of one of those guys who just thinks that any deck that is good, you'll use it?
So I've definitely played every kind of deck just to know how to play it or just to know what to expect. On the question of, like, do I subscribe to the hate of a deck? I can do it, but usually no, because it's it's a game. You have to have well-rounded, like, everything. You have to have things ranging from cycle to like beatdown. If you don't have it, you're missing like huge parts of the game. It's just when it comes to certain strategies, maybe things could be toned down. You said we're going to touch on things like Graveyard really soon.
Yeah.
The only opinion that I have that I'm concrete sure on, foreshadowing, is that there's a difference between broken and OP. I think that cards like Balloon are OP, but they're not broken. I think just a little bit too strong. But I think Graveyard is broken. Ewiz I think is OP, strong.
Okay.
Yeah, like, right? And certain strategies like Lava Loon, while there is, metaphor, like skill, like hand quotes, like air quotes, skill to it, there are just certain sometimes Lava Loon can get way more than it should, than I think other decks should. I know that's not really an answer, but it's as close as I can get to how I feel about if people ask me if like there's skill in the game.
Maybe the skill gap isn't as big in some archetypes as others, or some
exactly. Like if you ask people who only play Lava Loon, like, do you think Lava Loon is skilled? They'll say yeah. If you ask only people who play only Hog Rider, they'll say yeah. Ask anyone about skill, and they always respond to you very biasedly. It's always a very biased conversation.
No, I agree with you there, and I think that kind of to echo some of your sentiments there. I think that every archetype, every deck type does require skill. I mean, there's a reason the same players, the same, handful of players out of the tens of thousands of max players gravitate towards the top of the standings beyond just them having max cards, and the same thing with tournament level standards. You see some players just continuing to rack up tournament wins or grand challenge after grand challenge, 12 win after 12 win. And I always cite one of my clanmates, trainer Nick, is a Lava Loon player, right? And he gets a lot of hate for it, right?
Yeah.
But like, he can win 11.5 average wins in a grand challenge using Lava Loon. Whereas somebody like me, I'm not afraid to admit I probably average like 7 or 8. Like, I'm just not a big Lava Loon player, So there's definitely a skill gap there. You can say I suck, but at the same time, like, there's something innate about the ability of some people to really grasp a certain archetype, I feel.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Let's go. We talked about Graveyard a little bit. You kind of teased us about your opinion on it. Let's kind of go right into that, because I am curious on what you think about Graveyard in particular. You kind of said it was broken. So tell us what you mean by broken.
Okay, so this one's gonna be a long rant, and I'm sure that
Go for it,
if
man.
anyone like watches my stream, they'll
Grab
know.
your popcorn, guys. A good time for a soda or a beer.
Yeah, incoming hate, but basically, I've been aware of Graveyard's like the fact that it's unfair. It's just a really badly designed card for a long time now. If you track the history of Graveyard, it was on the rise during the beginning of CRNAO with players like Colton, players like Inferno really abusing the card, learning it. So that's where it started. If you keep in mind the timeline of something like Graveyard Giant Poison, they gutted Giant Poison after a long period of time where Giant Poison was like super OP, right? Mm-hmm. Graveyard has been the top tier 1 deck or top tier 1 like strategy for longer than Giant Poison has already been. For like, I think
quick interruption.
Yeah.
When you say tier 1 deck, can you list off what you think the tier 1 decks in the game are right now? I know it's way off topic, but I've heard you say that a couple times. I'm just curious where you think it is right now in the meta.
Tier 1 decks are probably like Hog Log Bait, Graveyard Poison Cycle, particularly things like E-Wiz, Furnace, like the one Tag is using, and maybe like minor poison variants with like Battle Ram, Bandit, stuff like that are really strong.
Maybe like Golem Beatdown, do you think?
Golem Beatdown, like Beatdown decks in general, are one below that, because you guys don't know it yet, but Tornado is back on the rise. Cycle decks are getting better. The thing about Golem and Lava Loon is that they take too long to get set up now, and they take way too much punishment.
Okay, good points. Go on. Sorry about that. So you were where I rudely interrupted. You were talking about the that Graveyard has been tier 1 forever.
Yeah, it's been tier 1 for a long time because it has way too much impact. On top of the whole RNG thing. Just to add on one more thing, I know a lot of people are probably going to respond to me with saying something like, "Oh, but you're only saying this because Orange Juice brought up in this video." Actually, I talked to Orange Juice about it. We brought up the same points. He agreed with me long before he even put that in a video. And I've been saying this card has been broken for months now. Months. So, that out of the way. Why is it broken? Well, it relies on a concept called RNG, which stands for Random Number Generator, which is a fancy word for saying randomness in the game, right? So we have to ask ourselves the question, like, if we consider Clash Royale a competitive game, a game where you have two players who understand, like, at the top of the level, like, everything that happens, like, every interaction. They know that if you play a Musketeer, a Musketeer will take out a Mega Minion without taking any damage. Every time, right? Unless outside factors happen to it. That's a stable interaction. The thing about Graveyard is that, to put in the words of Orange Juice, if you play, or Marcel, like, he said the same thing. If you play Graveyard, like a level 1 Graveyard, tournament standards, onto a level 9 tower, you do it 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, every single time will produce a different effect. So what that means is that, like, every interaction with Graveyard is different because of the random spawning of the skeletons. In a competitive game, you can't track that. You can't track randomness. You can't play toward randomness. You can do your best, but the variance is way too high. If the variance is way too high, like then the card is just it's a broken card, right? Like OP, I call Balloon OP. Balloon is OP because I think it just always gets way too much value for 5 costs and has way too much health. With the buff recently. But every time the balloon hits your tower, you know how much it's gonna do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every single time it hits your tower. If someone drops Graveyard on you, and I ask you how much does this Graveyard do, can you tell me the exact number that Graveyard does to your tower?
No.
Ever, right?
No.
You can never. So this card, yes, it really only impacts the top players, right? It's a competitive card, but it's the top competitive card. So, like this Graveyard, like really screws over a lot of decks. It's way too OP. I mean, if you have any questions on that.
Yeah. I have a couple follow-ups. So, first of all, way back when OJ was publicly complaining about the Graveyard being too random and too OP in competitive play, again, we got to stress that we're talking about, the competitive esportsy type feel, like these live competitions or big tournaments here, not more of a casual play and environment. So, when OJ first came out and said that, I kind of, I paused for a moment and I thought to myself, is it really the worst thing to have a random card in the environment of Clash Royale? Like, if they were to add another random spawn type card to the game, would it ruin things or would it just make things interesting? Even though you can't, I guess the fundamental question here is, does everything have to be mathematically predictable in order to have a healthy environment inside a sustainable esports type game, right? So I was unsure, to be honest with you. Like, I was 50-50, but now, like, listening to more, like, watching that OJ video, hearing you talk about it on your streams, and now, I think I'm more in your camp, where I do kind of wonder if you just have one random variable card like that, where it's kind of just luck-based, does that really fit? So I guess I'm closer to you in the argument, but just to play devil's advocate, what would you say to somebody who says, it's still, you can still defend against Graveyard very well if you plan against it. It can still be countered. It's not OP in the same sense of the balloon in that you always get tremendous value out of that 5 elixir cost. Is there an argument to be made that because you can counter it, almost pretty consistently with the right cards, that it's okay and it does have a place inside competitive play?
So this point has been brought up to me by a bunch of people in my chat as well. They just kind of, sorry, but they say it ignorantly. They just say, why don't you just have Knight and Log? Right?
Yep. Yeah, sure.
The answer is just like, why not just drop a Knight and Log? Okay. So does that mean every time I build a deck, I need to have Knight and Log in my deck? Does it mean every single time if I don't have these cards, what happens to me? This card on its own, if you take a look at it, I'm not saying like you can never defend like there's a reason why like not everyone's playing Graveyard, right? Like it's still super strong, but it's not like everyone's playing because it's completely broken out of this universe. No, but on principle, this card should not exist. It's like,
okay, yeah.
Give me another example of this card.
Yeah, there is none, because I thought about it, yeah.
It impacts it way beyond other esports. Like, if we take League of Legends, for example, the only RNG in the game, and you can't say crit is RNG. Crit is mathematically, like, you can plan out crit. The only RNG in the game revolves around the dragons. Every time they kill a dragon, a random one spawns. But they tell you which dragon's going to come up, and you can plan ahead of that. This game, Graveyard, will impact the game way beyond, just like any other card.
Yeah.
It's at the forefront of it, right? It's not like something that you can just kind of deal with.
Yeah, and that's you bring up really good points, and it's hard to argue with you, honestly. Like I said, at first I was kind of unsure, and now I'm gonna say that I agree with you. And I think you guys know me. If I disagreed, I would try to get a good coherent argument against it. But I don't know. Maybe Stefan, the game designer, if you're watching or listening, I'm calling you out, man. Actually, in all friendliness, the guy who makes or designs the cards and the balancing is like a savant, So I'd be really curious to hear what his logic is or what his thoughts are on having a random card like Graveyard. And to turn the table back onto you, EsoPa, I'm wondering, do you think that if like Lightning used to be in Clash of Clans, or I guess still is. I'm not sure if you were ever a big COC player, but basically,
Never.
basically when you drop a Lightning in Clash of Clans, the bolts land in the same spot every time, even though there's multiple ones. So if Graveyard was changed to the skeleton spawns always happen in the same place, would that fix everything, in your opinion?
Yeah, it would take away the RNG factor. I'd be fine with it.
Okay, yeah. So
that's
then,
all it is.
Because then all you would do, because then by that logic, as a defender, you would know where to place your archers every time to get the maximum defensive output, And I think that would solve or balance everything properly.
Exactly.
Take away that random. Okay, cool. Well, I think, go ahead.
I'm pretty sure they made this card because they wanted an aggressive card. They wanted a card that looks entertaining to watch, which it is. I can understand that. When I'm in Discord call with my teammates and they're playing Graveyard, we'll literally say like RNG, 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 because we want more damage out of Graveyard. And people will watch it and they'll be watching. They're like, oh my god, how much damage is this going to get? But as a player playing that, defending that is both unfun and unfair.
Okay. Point well taken, man. Well, we've talked about Graveyard a lot. Before I let you go, I wanted to get your thoughts a little bit on 2v2 mode. First of all, what do you think of clan battles, and do you want it more often, less often? Do you think it's good for the game, bad for the game? What are your thoughts?
So I'm pretty sure some people would disagree with me on this. Not on the point I'm going to make now, but like later on when it comes to we're talking about like competitive 2v2 or whatever. But in general, I love the game mode. I woke up and I didn't even know it was on. I was in a clan with a bunch of like top players and just jumped into a 2v2 game and just had the most fun. They built the game mode really well. I think the map could be a little bit bigger, but everything was perfect. You could see your partner's hand. They could see the card you're about to play. You can see their card. It just builds these really epic battles where you're just throwing spells everywhere and dropping cards like willy-nilly.
Yeah. Dude, it's so much fun to play. It's so addicting, too. I mean,
it's incredibly fun. And
I'm sure your clan was probably the same as mine, where pretty much every clan hit their chest like immediately, and then you just played anyway for no reason, So
I wasn't even a part of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I woke up and it was done.
Yeah, yeah. I think I was actually in Finland at the time, so I actually got to actually participate, unlike most people, in unlocking it. But it was it was a blast. So, what do you think from a more competitive elements to it? Do you think that? Obviously, let's be fair here. This was the very first iteration of this new game mode. They said they're working on improving it and changing it and implementing it in a better fashion to the game. So, before we judge too harshly, what are your first concerns, or maybe do you have any concerns about it possibly being like a 2v2 competitive esportsy live event?
Okay, so this is probably where the hate comes in. So, I can see this being, very more competitive than something like draft. I can see tournaments happening, but I don't see a competitive scene for it for a few reasons. One, I don't think that Supercell will probably put the infrastructure into the game to support this. Like right now, there's a 1v1 mode, multiple for challenges ladder, right? It exists, you can play it. Do you think that Supercell would add in a 2v2 ladder? Do you think that they would add in a 2v2 challenge that will always be there? Do you think that they would support a 2v2 over a 1v1 tournament if they ever do that? I'm sure that the community will, if they add in 2v2 friendlies, add in all this kind of stuff, they'll support 2v2 tournaments. That's great, but it's not really about the community when it comes to this being built up for right now.
Yeah, I think that, okay, so I have no inside knowledge on the future of 2v2, so I can speculate without having to, tiptoe around what the truth is. But I do know that they're working on all kinds of different game modes to add for 2v2, or I shouldn't say all kinds of different game modes, but they're experimenting with different game modes. So, what my perfect scenario would be as a starting point. They've been saying they're working on better tournaments for a long time now. Bring back the old tournaments. It's a common theme, especially in the competitive community. I think a perfect way to do that would be integrate 2v2 instead of adding like a whole nother ladder or a whole nother reward system. Just make 2v2 only custom tournaments. And that would be pretty easy, in terms of development and stuff like that. It's not like you need, like I said, a whole separate leaderboard or tier system of rankings. So I think that would be a good opportunity to do, to kill two birds with one stone, right? Make tournaments better, A, and two, give us another option to play 2v2 in, because I think the danger, in my opinion, the danger with 2v2 is also what makes it so incredible is 2v2 is so addictive and so amazing that I didn't even play one 1v1 game when 2v2 was out. So you don't want to take away from 1v1. Now, how much of that was just the fact that it was new and exciting and entertaining, and how much was the fact that it was better or more entertaining than 1v1? I think with the social elements that you're playing alongside one of your teammates, I think that's always better than solo play, comparing it to other, multi-player games. So my thoughts is that's probably one of the biggest challenges is how do you make 1v1 still appealing while 2v2 exists in a more permanent way inside the game? Do you what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head on that. I mean, they've said multiple times that we want to keep this ladder mode I just want to preface this by saying ladder is unfair, but they added this ladder in as a mobile game so that you can always jump into it right away. With this 2v2, I saw a lot of friends just say I think if they actually make this into a mode, 2v2 would just take over. No one will play 1v1 anymore. And I think that will probably never happen, really. If it does happen, then 1v1 dies, and then they just build this really weird kind of I don't know, the future's so uncertain with that, but
yeah.
Can
you? I'll put you on the spot. Can you see a day in 2017 where they host this year where they host a only 2v2 competitive live event?
If there is a huge outcry for we need this, but I don't think so.
Okay, and a same subject but a different subject. Your thoughts on 2v2 meta versus 1v1 meta? What were your takeaways in terms of what works better and what works, not as well?
Pretty quick, I would say that the cards that did well, I found were cards that gained value, were the best cards to gain value, typically AoE. Spells like Rocket, cards like Ewiz, Executioner, Tornado did really well. Cards that took time and were susceptible to AoE, like Elixir Collector and maybe Three Musketeers. Definitely Three Musketeers were really bad in that mode. Yeah, actually, what I've learned from 2v2 is that I played with one of my teammates, and what we did was we tried to build communication without really talking to each other on voice chat. We would play identical decks, so we'd play the Giant Hog deck, but we would play the same exact thing, and we built up teamwork that way. We would interchange cards and all that.
Yeah.
What I found out was doing that was probably not as efficient. 2v2 was best. If you really wanted to get good at 2v2, you needed to play decks that could cover each other. I found that a lot of minor hog decks work together. I found that Golem, maybe Lava Bait actually did kind of well.
Okay.
If one person runs Golem and one person runs support, I found that usually didn't work because it was too easy to stop the one person running one Golem. If the other two people were playing two separate archetypes and were working well together.
Yeah, I almost found the same thing. Like, I agree with you 100% on the cards. Like, AoE, when the arena is basically the same size, a little bit bigger, uh, everything AoE, anything area effect does way much more bang for your buck just because of mathematics, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of like what decks synergize well together, like, man, if you're both running Rocket, you're up to a good start, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah, there's a lot of spell
yeah,
cycling.
spells do really well, and like I've kind of found like carrying like freeze or rocket, like one person, and just comboing win conditions at opportune times with those spells, like it really just does really well. Like we had a lot of success just running like an average, as you would say, tier 1 deck, and then your teammate would just run like a mostly spell deck, but not all spell decks. So like a spell cycle with maybe E-Wiz and a couple other normal cards. And I just found that like for whatever reason it just works really well. But I think the future, and I'm curious to see if you agree or disagree with this last question for you, is do you think that there will be a whole new meta of different archetypes that evolve in different combinations in 2v2, or do you think it will stay within the confines of what we already have in the game?
The whole new meta.
Okay.
Definitely. I forgot. There's another thing. One of the things that like 2v2 couldn't be as big as 1v1 is because of just balancing in general. You can't balance
So
one
hard.
mode and have the other one balance as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. That's why I think 2v2 will always be just like a fun mode. Um, if you balance, if you balance for 2v2, 1v1 completely changes.
Yeah, it's a valid point. A lot of people have said that, and I'd be just so interested to hear what the team thinks of this. But we'll have to wait. Maybe they tell us
Oh
sometime.
yeah.
But
And one more thing,
yeah, yeah, sure.
With the 2v2 that I've noticed, there was a hidden MMR in the system. When because like we played all the time. While I was on stream, I basically played with Adam Zed.
Yeah,
Had him
beast.
on your channel for a few times, and we were just
Yeah,
like
he's a
doing
beast.
double 2.6, right?
Uh-huh.
And eventually, like we just won so much that we started facing the same players over, and these were like known players over and over again because they were doing the
Yep.
exact same thing.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, the only thing that you can get from that is that they actually added a ladder to 2v2. You just couldn't see
Yes.
it.
Yeah, I agree with you there because I had the same experience. I'm sure I wasn't on the epic win streaks that you did, but like the more you would win, we actually faced a few people. I'm not back to back, but like every other match.
Yeah, yeah.
After a point, and it was just like, whoa,
The queue
weird.
time started going up a little bit too, right?
Exactly. Yep. We had the same
Yeah.
thing. So yeah, there has to be some sort of mechanism in the matchmaking that kind of prefers people who I don't know, who knows what it's based on. If it's based on level, if it's based on best trophies, or if it's just based on win streak. I
Yeah,
don't know,
I
but
mean,
yeah.
just think about the implications of that. Why don't they add that to like real 1v1 ladder? Our right now, I guess they added it. Maybe
They added stuff to it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they added stuff to it. It's not only by trophies anymore, but
yeah.
if you want to bring this toward an esport, like MMR rating would be kind of cooler, I think. Just for like example, for the people who don't know what we're really talking about, if we talked about MMR, and like why it's really cool for climbing, instead of you guys always looking at your trophies being like 4K, 3K, and like going up little by little, other esports games have added leagues and MMR. What it means is like you move up in your little like pocket. You'll move up in like master rating to like grandmaster rating, and it gives you better sense of progress instead of
Yes.
just going from like 4K all the way to 5K and feeling like this huge journey ahead of you. So I just think it would be really cool. Like they could implement it, and it would be easier for casual players to just like feel more accomplished when they climb.
I really like that idea, honestly. I love the idea of having like a rank that you try to improve versus just kind of being on that seesaw that is ladder.
Yeah, just like seeing. I mean, it's basically the same thing. It's just
Yeah.
like how you show it.
It's the
You
mental.
know?
Yeah.
It's mentally, and I think ladder probably infuriates a lot of people because they see their trophies go up little by little or go down a lot, or I've coached a lot of players to a point where their ladder means everything to them, and it really shouldn't. It's a game. Like you can have fun with it, or use if you want to improve, like use it as a progress bar.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. Dude, I've had you on a while now, taking up a lot of your time. So just wanted to thank you again, dude. I always love chatting with you. You're such a, like I said in the beginning of the video, you have like a really in-depth and next level takes on all these topics. So I hope you guys enjoyed talking to EsoPa as much as I did. You can check him out on his stream. Of course, the link will be below to you guys to check
Yeah.
out. Also his Twitter. Any shout outs or anything like that we should know about EsoPa?
Yeah, so if you guys don't know who I am, like Ash said, I am a Twitch streamer, Clash Royale. My schedule has been a little bit all over the place right now because of school and my internet, unfortunately. But you can check me out on Twitter at twitter.com/esostream. And I've actually been uploading a lot of YouTube videos to my channel.
Oh,
It's
nice.
geared toward helping players improve. A lot of coaching, and I'm in the middle of making my hog series, uh, and that's youtube.com, I think, /esopa1. So you guys can check that out too if you want, more content from me. But yeah, it's always a pleasure being on your channel, man.
Thanks again, man. And the Hog series, I'm excited for that. I'm going to check that out as soon as we stop recording.
Yeah,
So,
right
guys,
now I'm on the third part, and I'm actually getting replays from top hog players. So we're gonna go through all of
sweet.
that.
Sweet, man. Well, I'm looking forward to that. And you guys check that out. Again, all the links will be to you guys in the bottom. So, but thanks again, man.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you for having me on.
No problem. All right, guys, that is going to do it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed the chat. It was a blast to talk to EsoPa. Just wanted to give a final shout out to my YouTube partner, Bren Chong. Check out his social media information in the description below for giveaways, tournaments, and much more. Guys, thank you so much for watching. And as always, take care, guys.